We've all heard way too much that Chinese is the hardest language in the world, and there's so many characters, how on earth can we remember them all? Not to mention the tones, where if you change the sound slightly, it can have a completely different meaning. As someone who's been studying Mandarin Chinese for about 7 years now, I think it's actually a lot easier compared to English, and here's why. First, we need to talk about the writing system. English seems to randomly combine a bunch of letters to make a word, and just by looking at the word, you don't necessarily know the meaning. But this is where Chinese comes in. Chinese is made up of characters, which to the outsider seem like just a bunch of squiggly lines, but they actually hold so much meaning and make so much sense. Characters can be further broken down into radicals, which are the basic blocks of meaning. There's a radical for heart, a radical for water, a radical for person, a radical for mouth. I could just go on and on. There's about probably 200 or more radicals, but they each have a specific meaning. And you can see that they actually look a little bit like what they represent. And radicals can be combined to make characters, which can be combined to make words. For example, the character fei means fly, and the character ji, which the left side is composed of the wood radical and the right side is the ji pronunciation component. When you combine them together, it means plane. Fei ji, flying machine. My next point is around pronunciation. Now you'd think that English, because it's an alphabetical language, it's easy to pronounce, but you're wrong. Please explain to me why tough, trough, though and through all have the OU letter combination, but in all of these words it's pronounced very differently. How is anyone learning English meant to remember these little intricacies? For me, Chinese pronunciation is so much easier because there's only a finite amount of different sound combinations. According to Pinyin, MA is always pronounced as ma, or Alayan is always pronounced as lin. The only variation is that of the tone, but that's easy to remember. And to be honest, it's not even a fact of remembering it, it's just saying it enough times that you form a kind of rhythm of the language, and it just becomes something that comes out naturally. Another reason why Chinese is so much easier than English is that there are no verbal conjugations. Or in other words, how we speak about tense is just so much simpler in Chinese. For example, in English, the sentence to drive a car, drive, which is the verb, actually changes spelling depending on the tense. For example, it can be driven, drove, driving, yeah. And pretty much each verb has its own spelling for different situations. Chinese is great because you don't have to worry about any of this, and instead you just put in a few different characters depending on what tense it is. For example, le to indicate an action that's completed, or 现在 for stuff that is happening in the moment. This way you don't have to remember the different combinations for hundreds and hundreds of verbs. Now this next point might not be a reason why Chinese is easier than English, but it's something interesting to mention. If you see here, the length of written text in Chinese is actually way shorter than that of English. Chinese tends to cut out a lot of superfluous words and concentrates more of the meaning in a shorter amount of text. For example, instead of saying in English, I want to go to, you can just say 我要去 什么什么什么. So I guess this provides a benefit for not having to remember as many words and is just a more efficient way of communicating. Now, I know I've probably overlooked a lot of the hard things about learning Chinese, but this is nothing in comparison to the verbal conjugations, pronunciation, spelling, and just a lot of general inconsistencies that you find in the English language. And as people whose first language is English, we actually take so many of these things for granted, just because English is such a global language. So in this whole debate of which one is harder, English or Chinese, I think we should give way more credit to English learners. Anyway, in case you want to learn more about my story of learning Chinese, you can click on this video here. 谢谢大家，拜拜。